Good evening. Welcome to the Mom to Mom show, brought to you by ECRC, featured live on the Mom to Mom page. My name is Lisa Denha, and I'm here to talk to you tonight about the season of Lent. And joining me are Kim Kerwin. She is the religion teacher and the youth minister at St. Fabian. Patrice Abuna, the executive director at ECRC. And Reem Simona, who's the youth minister at St. Thomas.
Hey,
ladies, welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thanks for having us.
being here.
Thanks for having us.
It's so hard to believe that we're already going into the season of Lent because I feel like we just finished celebrating Christmas.
Exactly. We were just doing the same thing. Exactly.
Yeah. You know, but Lent is here, and it's such a great season, and there's so much to talk about and so much to learn about the season of Lent that I'm excited to do this show, and I'm sure the viewers are so excited to hear what we have to say. And viewers, just remember, if you have any questions to ask, please ask them. I do have the page running on my phone, and we will pick up any questions that you have, and we'd love to answer them. So with the season of Lent, there's so much to talk about. So I figured maybe the first question should be is, why do we as Catholics participate in Lent?
That's a good one. Yeah.
It is a good question. I think we live in a very busy world, and we have all of us have very busy, full lives out in the secular world with our faith life, whatever. I think the check-in to prepare yourself for the resurrection of Jesus is a really awesome way to bring yourself closer to him, to his suffering and his resurrection for your salvation.
Mm-hmm. And I think there's actually a beauty of it. When you look at all the seasons of the church, we have Advent to prepare for Christmas, then we had these seasons of summer, all these beautiful seasons in the Chaldean, right? But to have this Lent, and you know it comes every year. So I've heard some people say, I do really good during Lent, I do all these great things, and the rest of the year I'm kind of okay. But that's kind of like the church and her wisdom to know that we all need that. Like we need that time where, okay, we're gonna fast, we're gonna pray, we're gonna do these extra things, this little boost in our faith. So I think there's definitely beauty in it.
It's very personal. Like we say that to our teenagers and youth groups. It's a very, Christmas is a very giving. So it's much about family, and there's a lot of chaos with it. But fasting is a very personal thing. It's, you're looking internally, and everything is done with your own personal growth. And, you can, like you were saying, the checks and balances of what you are when it comes to the resurrection. Are you prepared to even celebrate that? So to partake in it, it's a very personal thing, I think.
And I think that repentance is so important.
Yeah, for
I know,
sure.
like in the Latin rite, we have Ash Wednesday, where we literally mark ourselves with just the dirt of our sins. And those ashes, many people don't know, those ashes come from the previous Palm Sunday palms.
Yes.
So we're just sanctifying ourselves to return our life to what we've walked away from in big or small ways.
Now, you mentioned Ash Wednesday. That is something that is recognized in the Latin Rite, but it's not recognized in the Eastern Rite. Does anyone know why that is?
We don't want the poochkies. No, I think it's a technicality of calendar, I think.
Yeah.
We have our 50 days, and I don't know anything different otherwise. I'm sure if we look into it further, there's much more theological one, but nothing really that's very monumental. I think it's just a technicality and calendar difference.
I think, goes back through history of patriarchs and popes and schisms and stuff like that. But
yeah, I've been told by a priest that it's just that the Chaldean season starts on a Sunday and we just begin the season the next day. Whereas the Latin Rite took Easter and counted backwards 40 days, didn't include Sundays, didn't include the Triduum, the last 3 days, Holy Thursday, Good Friday, and that's how they got their 40 days. Whereas we just start on that Sunday, that first Sunday of Lent, and then we go through to Easter.
Right through
and
Easter.
That's 50 days.
There's no right or wrong way.
No.
I think it's just
your own
tradition.
personal preference.
Yeah, I think it's just tradition, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So how can we participate in Lent as a family?
there are so many ways.
She
My
brought all
gosh,
these
look at all
ideas.
this stuff I brought. And you have
props this
ransacked my office
True
for you
teacher,
guys.
true teacher over here.
Yeah. So obviously families, you've got intergenerational, interage stuff going on. So as a family, one of the first steps would be to just discuss it as a family. And I think we get caught up in our individuals, and it's well, I know we did that. We all said grace, right? So we're good. So just starting off Lent by having that family discussion is really huge, where let the kids weigh in on what is something as a family we can give up. Maybe if we all give up 30 minutes of TV a night, or instead of all going off on our different devices in different rooms, we're gonna sit down every night and come together and pray. I know often the kids are like, well, like recently I just interviewed our confirmandi and our Eastern Rite kids who are going to be rekindled in their confirmation. And one of the questions I asked is, who in your life models Christ to you? And many of them, multiple kids, my mom. I was like, that's sweet.
That is sweet.
How does your mom show you Jesus? My mom prays so much. And that's awesome that they recognize that, but is mom praying with them? Like maybe it's time we circle the wagons and we pray together a little bit. Yeah. And so some of the things I brought, and not drop my microphone, is, for example, I have this calendar. We handed these out to our religious formation students. And what it's got on, it's similar to an Advent calendar, things you can give up, things you can do, go through
every day.
Go donate something. So it's just a little preparation. There's different
Is this
age groups
something
out there.
available online for some of the parents that are watching?
I am assuming that there is 5,000 different versions of this.
Yes.
This was ordered because we got them in bulk for our school kids and our religious ed kids. One of the other things.
You can even make your own calendar.
Oh, totally. You
As
could
a
sit down
family.
as
Yes,
a
as a
family.
make it very
Yeah.
personal. That's a really good idea.
Some of these other things I brought, devotional books. Matthew Kelly loves to put
Yes.
these out.
St. Thomas just gave that out to all the parishioners.
Yeah.
Rediscover
And you also
the
have
Saints,
Rediscover
yes.
Jesus is a good one for Lent.
Yeah.
That's a great
40
one.
days.
Yes.
So, like with this one, with Rediscovering the Saints, read a saint a day. Read them together, discuss the questions. There are different Lenten devotions. Dynamic Catholic just put out a Lenten journal that is more for adults with daily scripture and things, but there are also kid version ones.
Yeah, that's the best Lent ever.
Yes.
So I actually had Vanessa, she's behind the scenes. She'll share the link for that one. That's good.
Perfect.
You get these daily emails
Yeah.
and
Yes.
little videos.
Little
and-
5-minute
But you
clips.
can order like a physical book if you're like me and Rima. We like to actually
I like
write
to make
things
a
down.
mess, yep.
Little
Like I can watch
margins.
videos all day and it goes ooh,
Exactly.
But like
Oh,
when I
sure.
write, so we'll share the link because Dynamic Catholic has great resources.
Yes. Now, the Archdiocese of Detroit just published this book. It's called 52 Sundays. And the issue between Latin to Eastern is our Gospels don't always match up with yours.
No.
Yeah.
But it does have just activities to kind of like reclaim Sunday. And so this one started with the Epiphany and goes all the way through, but it has different activities, recipes, saints to devote to, stuff like that. So there's different things out there. Stories, devotions, these resurrection eggs go with the book that's underneath them, where almost like the Jesse tree, but at Lent, you can, as you get closer into Holy Week, there's a dozen eggs, and each egg has a different symbol, like the donkey or the palms,
Yeah.
where just to put in the hands of little people, because often we have these beautiful icons that like they're afraid to touch. So let them touch stuff.
Yes.
Little
Yeah.
guys love to touch stuff. Older ones love to be invested in how to help.
One
as
of
a
the
family.
things that I know that worked for us was working a fish fry together as a family.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and we couldn't, Dad couldn't always be there, obviously, because of work, but it's something that the kids and I did together. And we would donate to the fish fry, and then we would work the fish fry. And of course, it was after Stations of the Cross, so you would get your prayers, your fasting, and your almsgiving all at once. But it was something that really clicked in the kids' heads, and it was seeing all the families there and all the other kids that were there participating in like Stations of the Cross and just following their faith and being part of a community really opened up their eyes to the
Yes.
importance of following.
And that young,
Yeah.
it's cool, yeah.
I think it's good to give the kids, I know like we do with teenagers, but even younger with the middle school, to give them their why.
Yes.
I mean, instead of saying, like, there's a lot of, I know, Patrice, you'll probably agree with me, there's a lot of things where, like, I don't know why we do that. Nana said so that's why I've been doing it like
Yes.
that. So
I grew up my whole life like that.
Nana said so. So the why, and Father Andrew said something that years ago at one of the middle school youth groups, and it just stuck with me. And it was the beginning of Lent, and he said, just remember as you're journeying through these 50 days of Lent, that the very same people that proclaimed Hosanna were the very same people that yelled crucify. And in your 50 days, you're going to be tackled with these like fasting where you're going to want to cheat or you're going to want to mess up, and you might mess up on accident or whatever it may be, but just, be careful. Are you really apt to yell crucify? So then that journey for the 50 days was really the story of Easter, because it becomes so distant because it's so far and it's so grand. But when you give them their why and make it so personal and simplistic, I think it kind of puts them on the journey a little bit easier, I think, when you understand why you're doing it.
Right, exactly.
We did have a viewer, I'm sorry, that
no, go ahead.
tapped in. She said, are we supposed to fast on Sundays?
So we debated that right before
Yeah.
the show
Yes.
started a lot. And I think that the short answer is I would discern that on your own heart. So technically the church teaches that every single Sunday of the entire year is equivalent to Easter Sunday.
So it's a
every
feast.
single Sunday. So it's like a high feast.
Yeah.
So every Sunday you're celebrating the resurrection, so you shouldn't be fasting because we're celebrating the resurrection. But personally, and again, it's a personal thing, I find it too easy. If
Yep.
if I only fast for 6 days and I get to do what I gave up, to me it's not as much of a challenge. So I like to go the full 50 days.
For me, it's not even the challenge. It doesn't make it as special when Easter Sunday
Easter Sunday.
comes.
Yes.
Especially if
Yeah.
you gave up food or coffee or something, then you're drinking it once a week. It doesn't feel as
Yeah.
like you
It's
were
not as
actually
hard.
just deprived.
And
of
also,
it.
Lent is your Lenten promise,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
So you're promising for 6 days. You're like, oh, okay, I don't have to promise anymore. Then you get back on Monday. You're promising for 6 days, and so it's like if you have your promise, it's up until the resurrection. So it is
Yeah.
at our own discretion. It's not wrong to give up your fast on Sundays, but it's your own personal
Yeah.
part of your own personal promise.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think it also comes down to the same thing you're talking about, the why. So are you like, I gave up shopping for Lent, but I shop on Sundays? Okay, well.
Well, then you got everything you wanted.
said
Yeah.
all that
Social media.
chocolate, you said all that
All
chocolate
week.
you didn't eat all week, and then you just eat it all on Sunday. Well,
And you find yourself eating much more chocolate than you ever would anyway.
Yes,
Yes.
of course, yeah. Or the social media, then you're just ignoring
Yeah.
the family all day Sunday.
Yeah.
You're just on social media.
What would you say the goal is of the Lenten season?
I think it's,
And I
really-
would assume everybody would have their own personal
Right.
goal.
Yeah.
But just overall.
well, to lose weight, right?
Yes.
Yeah. To save money.
Save money.
Yeah.
I think
Right.
ultimately it's conversion.
Yes.
And I hear it so many different ways, but I think the biggest picture is conversion. It's,
Yeah.
that narrow pathway to heaven kind of a thing. It's a narrow door. So I think, it's part of why, and then we always say when you've, given up something when you're fasting for something, always add something in there. So one of our teens was like, I'm going to be nicer to my mom. Well, don't stop being nice to your mom the day after Easter,
Or on a Sunday.
Continue it on, or on Sunday,
Or on a Sunday.
continue it on. So I think it's not just something that, the 50 days and the 40, we prep ourselves for it, for the resurrection, but I think it carries through that. So it's a conversion of just us as Catholics, I think, the
Yeah.
entire way through.
Changing your heart
Yeah.
to be more generous with people and also just more prayerful. I love that when I learned, because I used to always fast. We're always really good at fasting.
Yes.
I didn't realize there was 2 other elements, prayer and almsgiving. We did
Yeah.
the little
Yeah.
milk thing when we were kids and put
Oh,
the
the rice
penny,
bowls
yeah,
and stuff. Yeah.
all of that. But I didn't realize as an adult, I really should be a significant almsgiving.
Yeah.
I should
Yes.
be donating to an organization or to something. And then the prayer part I've grown so much. And if anything more in that area, the other 2, over the last few years of my faith journey is just adding in some sort of listening to a podcast,
Yep.
adding in a
Yes.
book, listening to Catholic radio or watching Catholic TV. And when you realize it's such beautiful things coming in, you realize how much more beautiful things come out. It's like garbage in, garbage out. You're watching
Yes.
garbage TV. And
Yeah.
That's the exact
You know?
line I use with my kids. Garbage in,
Garbage in, garbage out.
Yes.
Exactly.
Well, and almsgiving too, that can be a whole family thing as
Yeah.
well, right? So
The swear jar.
the swear jar or at the school, we always have some type of Lenten almsgiving thing. This year we're collecting socks as a school, which St. Fabian, we're collecting socks. I haven't told you yet, but we're collecting socks because what is the one thing homeless shelters always need? They always
Socks.
need socks.
Right.
And it's really easy to drop your kids at school, run to Kohl's, buy some socks, drop the socks in the school office. Your kids have no idea that
Then
they
check.
brought in socks. Yeah, and then check it off the list. But get them involved, drag their butts to Kohl's, have them
Yeah.
pick out some socks.
Maybe make them pay for the
And
socks.
to piggyback off that, I recently learned that of the 3 pillars, you focus on the one you lack the most. So fasting for me, if I gave up meat, it wouldn't be a sacrifice for me.
Right.
It's very easy. So it's but I do struggle sometimes in making the time to pray. So we do the 3 pillars, the fasting, the almsgiving, and the prayer, but focus. So if you're someone that has a shopping addiction, so give that up.
Yes.
Give that up. Then
And
you
take
go
it
and you're
one
fasting.
Step further,
Yeah.
the money that you save from not shopping,
Give it to the-
donate
Donate
it.
it.
Or
Exactly.
eating out,
Exactly.
the money you save from eating out. It shouldn't just be great, I'm richer.
Yeah.
Yes.
If
Let's
you're
give
going to
that
cut
up.
out
Right.
social media, the time that you have now,
Now
Put it into
donate
prayer.
that time.
to-
Exactly.
to praying.
That's what I
or-
wanted to make that point too. That's something
Yes.
that we always say is ECRC. We have so many areas people to volunteer. So do the local churches.
Yes, we
and
do.
so I'm sure even
Ladies
the-
of
Yes,
Charity.
we do. Ladies of
Ladies of
Charity.
Charities, yes, we do.
That's almsgiving.
Yes.
Yep.
If you are tight on money and your family, you're
Yeah, go give your
that's
time.
fine.
Give us
Yes.
your
Give
time.
Give of
It
your
doesn't have
time.
to
That
be
is
dollars.
That's considered
Yes.
tithing in Scripture. God calls
Yes.
us to tithe. That's considered tithing.
Well, and for all of us
Giving
who
of your
who handle the different things where you need volunteers,
Yeah.
you tend to see the same 20% of the population,
10 for
right?
us.
So yeah, there's 80 to 90% of your population that's like, I'll write a check, cool, but I really needed somebody there.
Yeah. Someone to
Yes.
make
We'll
the
still take the
coffee,
check, though.
Yeah, you bring that check.
Bring the checkbook, bring
But
yourself.
with your family too, yeah.
But no, don't mail it.
But that can also be a donation of your time is such a great
Yes.
thing. So if it's shopping, don't go shopping, but go volunteer somewhere. Or even if it's something you put off in terms of like you're going to schedule it for later. Because one of the things is we tend to see in like shelters, soup kitchens, places that need volunteers, they get a bumper crop of volunteers during Lent. They get a bumper crop of volunteers from Thanksgiving to New Year.
Yeah.
They're desperate in July. They are
Well,
so
Kim,
desperate for
my
help in
thing
July.
is, and we just had a show for Ladies of Charity because we run a food pantry, and it's amazing how much people will donate during Thanksgiving and come in to help. And I'm like, people are hungry all year round.
Every
Like
day.
in July, they're still hungry.
still
you
hungry.
know,
That's
and they're
true.
hungry in September. And it's not just Christmas and Easter and
Yeah.
Thanksgiving that
Unfortunate,
they
we
need
forget.
food
Yeah.
Yep.
or we need the help. It's all year round. You know? But I suppose then the goal coming out of Lent is to continue, to make it a
Exactly.
habit.
Yes.
I think to make the habit, because I've
make it a
I've like
habit.
added in an extra mass, I've added an adoration, added rosary, and to continue those after Lent, like that's the point.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I agree.
Yeah,
I
to
totally
have those
agree.
good habits.
Yeah.
Yeah, but before we move on from the family thing, I think there's a lot of really good tips for kids. But I wanted to challenge spouses too. So my husband and I did, during Advent, there was a challenge to pray one chapter of the Gospel a day. The Gospel of Luke, there was 25 days and 25 chapters.
Yep.
So we prayed one chapter a day. Sometimes it would be 2 or 3 a day because we'd be behind. But it was really beautiful to do together because our kids are young. My daughter's not even 5 yet, and they're younger than her. So as a couple to grow together was really beautiful. So this Lent, we want to do something together. Whether that's going to stations together. So ECRC is going to do one couple stations of the cross, one of the Fridays. We haven't picked out which Friday yet. So we actually have a special stations that's made for couples. But whether for your fasting or whatever you're doing to maybe talk to your spouse about
Yes.
too. So.
Magnificat, their publication, they also publish an Advent book, a Lent book. And actually, I just saw something about a Stations for Couples book that they're
awesome.
putting out.
Nice.
So yeah, Magnificat's all
Very
over the
nice.
place with stuff. And my husband and I are the same way because we don't have kids. So it's like we need to make this conscious effort to
Yes.
sit down and pray. 'Cause otherwise, we're running all over the place with work. And as someone who works in the church, Lent in the church is like retail at
Yes.
Christmas
Yes.
time.
This is your busy season.
Right. So
Yes.
you're lenting everywhere, but are you
you
personally
lenting, right.
lenting?
Yes.
And I mean, there are times where I have prayed the Stations of the Cross while swimming laps at the pool because I sure wasn't doing it while I was directing teenagers who were supposed to be leading it. That was
Yeah.
not a prayerful thing. That was a yelling at kids thing. So
So now we talked about different ways to get our children involved in Lent, but how do we really even explain Lent to our kids? How do you explain it to a child? And I have a son who's autistic, and sometimes I'm still trying to get him to understand Lent. So we'll talk about how you give up meat, but then he doesn't understand sometimes that pepperoni is meat as
Yeah,
well,
right.
or or the concept of why is it that we're giving up what we're giving up. What is a good way to have that talk with your children, to explain it to them?
I think you go to the gospel, and I think you talk about Jesus's life, and it can be with a picture book, and it can be with something more metaphorical. But I think you look at what did Jesus Christ do? Because Jesus prayed, Jesus healed, he fed people, he took care of people. He really lived out in his human form what we do during Lent. And so you get a picture book of the gospel if you need to. Often I have parents that are like, the Bible's really hard to read. I'm like, get a kid's one.
Yeah.
Get a
absolutely.
middle
As
school
adults,
kid.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes,
We have that all
adults
the
do
time.
that
Bibles are
too.
Yeah.
amazing. Yes.
Yeah, and they have all kinds of backstory and stuff. And I think if you can really look into what Christ did, and that's what we want to do, because we as baptized Christians, we are the kingdom priests, and that's our job, is to be Christian outwardly to other people as well as inwardly in our heart. So we do what Jesus Christ showed us to do.
What is a good age to introduce this to them?
Like communion.
I would say communion.
Once they've taken their
I
first
think you
communion.
could go younger. I think you just get it bigger as they get bigger. Because I know like our kindergartners, they learn about Jesus' crucifixion in a very not as historically accurate way.
Right,
but
in a
still,
storytelling way, right.
In a storytelling way. One of the things our kindergartners do is in the school, I gave them blank feet. And every day the class picked some way that they were growing closer to Jesus. So maybe because we all prayed together, or maybe somebody reported seeing somebody else help someone. And they wrote it down on the foot, and they stuck it to the wall, and every foot got closer to the crucifix.
that.
So then they were walking the path to the crucifixion. And where they're not ready for all the just heart-wrenching suffering of Holy Thursday through Sunday morning, they are ready to have a hard time with something by giving something up or waiting to learn more patience or praying more. And even if it's focusing more on Christ's life, so that by First Communion, when you're learning about the Last Supper and you're learning about what that really means, they get it.
That makes sense.
I think you do make a good point where, because Jesus does that, right? He meets us exactly where we are. So you would meet your son where he is. If he's not quite comprehending the fasting of meat, then we just make that, I mean, right, we were talking about our own personal Lenten promise, right? So I think that that's a really good point. We just meet the kids where they are, where they comprehend, and where they could say, this will annoy me if I don't have my video game, or if I don't get to do this or that, and that's their fasting. So I think that's a really good point where we just have to meet, and I think even as adults, we meet each other where we are. Of course, the goal is to push towards Christ, but he did meet us exactly where we were at all times, so that's a good point.
Yeah.
Sure.
It is. Why is it that we fast from meat on Fridays? Why is Friday the day?
I think Friday we're remembering the crucifixion.
That's how I
So
learned
it's
it.
like the most sorrowful day of the
Yeah.
week.
Yes.
And that's why, so we're fasting on that day, and the church just felt like that fasting from meat would be a challenge.
That's how I learned it too.
Especially-
And meat is like a feast. It represents a feast. So it's like a very grandiose, kind of
Yes.
a meal.
Like
so that
prodigal son when he
exactly
slaughtered the cow.
yeah.
And I think we don't see it as much because we eat more fish and we are more aware of like healthy eating and versus unhealthy eating. So for us, a feast might be sushi, which has no animals involved.
Yeah, that's true.
But
We talked about this a lot with Ba'utha that just came up, and so Ba'utha is a 3-day fast in the Chaldean tradition. We don't eat anything till noon, and we don't eat any meat or animal products or dairy or like anything.
Right.
And it's like, that's great, but then if you make this beautiful biryani that tastes delicious,
Yeah.
it defeats the whole purpose of it. So
Right.
if
And
you're
that
not
dish
eating meat
takes
on
hours
Fridays,
to
but you're
make.
going out for sushi,
Yes.
or you're making your salmon dish, then
Yes.
I think your Friday fast all year round,
Should
but
be
especially
very
during Lent,
simple.
should feel simple. Even they do the fish fries and stuff.
Yes.
I like fried fish. I mean,
Yeah.
it
Yes.
should be something where you're just kind of
Fish
not.
sticks, yeah.
And that's
It's not his feast.
that's why like the fish fry is so awesome because it's this great like fellowship thing and
Yeah.
it's following all the observations. And if you've fasted through the day where you've had 2 very small meals to prepare yourself for that, but then how do you end it? You go pray stations, or you pray stations before you go. You take that fellowship with that prayer life as well.
To me, the one of the things that I enjoyed the most from the fish fry was the fellowship.
The fellowship.
Yes.
It was
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
to be a part of the community, and we're all
I
there
agree.
for the same purpose.
Exactly.
And
Yes.
it's 7:00 at night, and
Yeah.
we're all busy, and it's Friday, and we make the time out to go.
Yeah.
Our Lenten suppers, well, we never have fish because we don't have fryers, but we have meatless meals,
Yeah.
lots of pasta, things
Yeah.
like that. And our youth group actually runs them. So it's
Oh, cool.
It's a fundraiser for their mission trip, but it's also, you've got teens running dish machines, you've got teens bussing tables, and you've got parents in the kitchen helping, and it brings together all these generations.
That's awesome.
And every Friday night, we have people that come from all walks of life because it gets published out in the world, but then also lots of our devoted parishioners who, my kids were in the youth group, and we used to work these, and I went on that mission trip, and so there's lots of
That's cute.
just intergenerational bringing the community together. It's
Yes.
awesome.
I love that.
That is, it's so nice. We have a viewer that's asking, why does our Lent start on Monday and not Ash Wednesday? And this is something that we answered in the beginning, but maybe just a brief, short answer, if we could explain to her why.
Do you want to?
Just a difference of calendar.
Yeah.
Just that's more just a tradition thing. But also to go more on that, a lot of our teenagers at youth group ask us that question. And so they say, well, I go to, a Latin Rite school. So can I just go ahead and go on their calendar? And it's a personal preference.
Yep.
But what we'd like to encourage is, because we're Eastern Rite, and because we're in the United States, so our community is just getting smaller and smaller as it is, to continue our traditions. Because if we all just start going to a Latin Rite we die out quickly. So it's not a no, it's not wrong to do either calendar. But because we are born in the Eastern Rite and we are Chaldean, we do encourage very much so to begin your fast on Monday, because that is what our calendar says.
Yeah.
My students in the school typically come in, okay guys, today's Ash Wednesday. We already started 2 days ago. I know you did, but the rest of us are joining in now.
Versus my kids.
And then
have
get
gone
catch up.
Catholic
And then Fat
schools,
Tuesday is very frustrating.
Yes.
because,
Oh, yeah,
it's
they
like,
have it all
You
over.
miss out on Fat
Yes.
Tuesday.
Yeah, we've never tasted poochies because we have no idea what they're like.
They're not.
You're-
worth it.
It's overrated.
They're not
It's
that great. Overrated.
So that's an Eastern European thing, actually, because the whole Fat Tuesday thing came from you've got to get rid of all of the stuff that's in your school job.
Yes.
They just put it all in.
Oh,
they
we eat ours
made-
on Sunday.
Well,
And if you have a real ponchki, I mean, just smelling it, you're like, God, you can smell all the butter.
It's
and
like
the
a day's
butter.
worth of
Eastern
sugar.
European
Yes.
people, I will tell you, it's a big glazed fried jelly donut.
Wow,
Yeah.
But it's a way to use up all your sugar and use up all your stuff,
Yes.
and
If
let's get rid of it
flour,
all.
the
Okay, that makes a lot of
yes.
sense.
Yeah.
Yes. So now, in the secular world, they get so caught up with Christmas and the Christmas season, and for Christians, Easter is really the holiest holiday.
Yeah.
Now, why is it that Christmas seems to be the more important one?
Capitalism.
Yeah, American capitalism.
Gift
Yeah, I think
giving,
it's more fun.
presents.
And I
Yes.
think that it's actually it's a nod to like what our culture has become is a culture of comfort.
Yes.
Constantly being comfortable. Everything. I want coffee. I stop and get coffee. I want this. I get it.
Very
I want
convenient.
I order it on my phone and I have it at my
Yes.
doorstep within
Yes.
hours.
Yes.
Sometimes Kroger or whatever will deliver it to my door.
Yes.
I don't have to go do anything. So we're just such this culture of comfort, and I feel like Christmas is just the spirit of extravagance. It's the season of extravagance.
It is.
Whereas Lent is the exact opposite. Lent is be uncomfortable, be hungry, be cranky, and
Offer it
be
up.
happy about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah,
And
but-
embrace it.
And embrace it. But I think we can all attest. I don't know about you guys, but coming out of Lent, you always feel like rejuvenated. You always feel closer to God. You always feel like
Yes.
if you had a good Lent, you feel like it was like a retreat. It was like I don't know.
Well, in America in particular, adopted Christmas is like, we're going to do this now. So we're going to go hard or go home. And so how many people celebrate Christmas that Jesus isn't involved at all?
Yeah.
Santa's involved and the mall's involved and stuff.
And the
But-
decorations,
Yeah.
the tree.
Yes.
Yeah.
I know
Yeah,
Jewish
all
people
stuff,
and Muslims
yeah.
that celebrate Christmas.
Yeah, I know a lot of
But
Muslims
it was
that do it. Yeah.
frustrating when my kids were little and you saw some of the cartoons on Nickelodeon. I just remembered the Christmas special was about Santa Claus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was
All
about
of them.
snowflakes and a snowman. And I'm like, that's not really what it's about.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Hallmark movies made a huge empire on it. Not one of them mentions Christ at all. I know, because I
Yeah,
watch them. They're a
that's
guilty
true.
pleasure.
Yes.
But
No, you're right.
they have nothing to do with
But they're
that.
wholesome.
They are
all
wholesome.
about like the
Wholesome.
Christmas love story.
And gingerbread
Yeah.
men and
Yes.
stuff like that.
Candy
And
cane
so,
factories.
like America really got behind the secular Christmas. And Easter, we got jelly beans and we've got eggs, and that's kind
The
of
Easter
it.
bunny.
The bunny.
And, yes,
Yeah,
the
and
Easter
Where does
bunny.
bunny come into play?
I don't
The
know.
lilies.
I don't get the bunny. I
it's a-
don't get it.
It's a pagan thing.
Oh.
When Christianity was first spreading, the early, not necessarily the apostle, but like St. Patrick, people who were going into the pagan areas to spread Christianity were trying to teach similar to what we do with little ones. I
Yeah.
need something to explain what this means. So in the spring, this man rose from the dead in a season of new life. An egg is a symbol of new life because new life comes from an egg. Bunnies, lambs, there's baby animals everywhere in the spring. And so it's those symbols of new life that tie to the resurrection. And so it is very hard to explain to a 4-year-old what a jelly bean has to do with Jesus. But to your non-practicing, we go to my grandma's for Easter. Did you go to church? No, but we have ham. Like there are so many
Yeah.
people that
Yes.
celebrate Easter because grandma does. At least you have to have that conversation a little bit because they don't know what the bunnies and the sheep and the lambs and the eggs are for either. But they're symbols of new life.
Okay. That makes
So
That does make sense.
Yes. We talked a little bit in the beginning about how Lent actually ends on Thursday night, Holy Thursday, and then we go into what's called I call it the Triduum, but I think I'm saying it wrong.
there's a double U in
W,
there.
yes.
It's a triduum.
Triduum.
Yes.
And can you explain a little bit about that?
So the
'Cause-
the Triduum are our 3 holiest days, and they are. I explain it to 11-year-olds as it's like super Lent because you're still fasting. You're now entering an intense season of prayer. So for us, Holy Thursday morning, there's this huge mass at the cathedral. We call it the Chrism Mass. All the priests go and they get the chrism. They get all the oil for the following
do
year.
that.
We do it too.
Yes.
We do it too.
Yeah, it's
And
beautiful.
It's so beautiful. And then Holy Thursday night is the Mass of the Lord's Supper, and that's when you're entering into Jesus' final hours. So I've never been to Holy Thursday at St. Thomas, but I've definitely celebrated Holy Thursday every other year of my life, where you start Mass and it's this beautiful, joyful Mass, and 12 people have their feet washed by the priests, and you very much are in that upper room with Jesus. And for us, Holy Thursday ends with the tabernacle being emptied and the tabernacle being left open.
All of
You
our
guys do that
churches
too?
do the same,
Sweet,
yeah.
cool. And then we have silent adoration until like midnight, and then Jesus is fully reposed, and that tabernacle stays open until Easter Vigil Mass.
Yes.
Ours too, yeah.
So you're going into these very holy, sacred hours, and then Good Friday, that's 3 hours minimum of prayer and mourning and crucifixion and stations. And in our church in particular, we have what we call the last 7 words, and speakers get up, and they're different.
That's an amazing mass.
Yeah, it
I've gone
is.
to
It
that.
is.
Yes.
And so and then you go into Easter Vigil, and the lights are all out, and there's fire, and there's all these God's creation symbols of fire followed by water at baptism, but everyone's entering the church with candles where they're passing that light. And you're in the dark until the Gloria comes on
Yes.
as you're hearing the Old Testament. And it's just, when you do the Triduum right, it is the most joyful thing when
Yes.
those lights
It's an
come
unbelievable
on.
experience.
It is amazing. And
Yeah.
in the Latin rite, we don't sing the Alleluia through all of
Yeah.
Lent. We don't sing the Gloria through Lent. So to just do that again at Easter Vigil, you're like, oh my gosh, this has been missing from my life. This
Yeah.
is
Yes.
amazing.
The one thing that we do almost sounds like almost everything.
Very
is
similar.
Very, very similar.
Oh, awesome.
Is Good Friday night, we do the church hopping thing,
Yes.
which I think for some people becomes kind of a social thing. I don't know about you, but
Sure.
when I was young, we were in my earlier 20s, we would, you know, I had a group of friends and we would start at one church. Like, how do we make it to all the churches before they close? And we'd go to one. We plan to go to this one for the play and this one for this. We'd pray one decade of the rosary.
Is this
on the
for
way
Good
to each
Friday?
one.
For Good
On
Friday.
Yes.
Yeah, we did
we
the
would
same.
make it to almost all the churches, but for me, that was like the first time I ever visited St. George. You know, that was like the only time of year I
Yeah.
ever go to Marat Day. Like these beautiful parishes that we have that you go to your church. I go to Mother of God. You go to St.
Yes.
Thomas.
So-
Like,
exactly.
you don't visit all of our churches, and it's just to walk into these churches, and all the statues are covered in these black veils. The tabernacle is open and empty. And then you just walk in and you drink a little bit of vinegar and you just pray. And then my friends would find out where Jesus was because they would put him in like a reposed tabernacle, but it was still somewhat open to the
Somewhere, yeah,
public.
somewhere there.
So we
Oh,
would
okay.
always go and like find where he was in like a sacristy or something. And we'd pray for a little. And then we'd, however many minutes we had and go to the next church.
It's funny, we did
And
opposite.
so-
We were sure not to go where he was.
Really?
Because he was dead, so we didn't have him. So we said, we want to feel that.
Yeah.
And so we would always make sure that we didn't miss the procession. The procession of him coming in is actually very emotional.
Yes.
Yeah,
When they
this-
bring in the
this
statue, yeah.
statue of crucified Jesus,
Yes, and
and
they
especially the one
venerate
at
it.
Marat Day.
Yes.
He's so bloody, and
Yes.
it's just you
And
just
it's very
see it, and
funeral,
you're
very
like-
funeral.
Yeah, it feels like
very
a funeral.
funeral-like.
That's
But,
very
but we all
funeral-like,
wear
yes,
black,
yes.
and it's just
We
a
do,
very,
yeah.
You almost want to feel it, and once I became a mom, it get a lot harder to be like, hey, I'm leaving the little ones and going to church for 3 hours. So I
Yeah.
go sometimes for like a half hour or a little bit, but
Oh, yeah.
but it almost doesn't feel like Good Friday if you didn't just at least visit the
Yeah,
church.
same.
Well, and
We did the
even
same. We did
even
the
just seeing
same.
that open tabernacle with no sanctuary lamp, it's like,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
it's jarring.
Yeah.
It's very,
Because he's
Yeah.
not here.
he's
But- and
gone.
I think,
Yeah,
a lot,
he's
I think
not
a lot of
here.
people connect with Good Friday. I remember talking to a priest once. We were like doing some evangelization work with ECRC. We're like, we want to evangelize. Can we come on Easter Sunday? Can we come on Christmas? He goes, do you know when the most people enter the church? He goes, Good Friday.
Friday.
He goes, we get more Chaldeans in the church on Good Friday than we do on Easter Sunday. I'm like,
Wow.
He goes, they'll come for Good Friday. They drink the vinegar. They pray. They leave. They don't come back 2 days later.
Oh my gosh.
But
And they
they're
come
just- it's
after
like
work. That's
that-
true. They come after work, tired.
Yes,
We see
because
it.
the churches are open
You're
till 1 or
right.
2 a.m.
Right.
on Friday.
And they make their
walk in.
stop
Patrice,
in.
just to cut in for a second, why the vinegar?
Oh, because that's when Jesus was crucified on the cross. He asked for water, and they gave him vinegar as
They
like
gave
to
him
mock
vinegar.
him.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you know where that comes from? That's actually got a very, very strong tie to the Last Supper, which is tied to Seder.
I've the fourth cup.
The
or
fourth cup
yeah.
that is drunk at Seder. Jesus didn't have a fourth cup at his Seder. He left to go pray in the garden, and so that was his final.
Yeah.
In the garden when he prayed, "Let this cup pass, and if it is your will, not mine." And then that fourth cup was given to him, which you don't leave Seder until the fourth cup is consumed. And so the fact that their Seder ended before that fourth cup was consumed was like unheard of in Judaic law. But then as he was dying and he completed the sacrifice for us, because it was his death that brought that sacrifice,
He used the fourth cup.
he had the fourth cup of wine.
Yeah.
So
I've heard it. I've never heard it explained that way. Thank you.
the 6th grade's Old Testament, I'm pretty solid in it.
See, when you teach, you learn. We were talking about that
Exactly.
earlier.
Yeah. You got to walk the walk. You
Yeah.
definitely have to walk
Yes.
the walk for
You
sure.
Deepen your faith a lot when you're spreading it to
Yeah.
It's
little
unbelievable
people.
when you start talking about our faith, how much more you just learn. And here we are, we're just
course.
talking about two different rites. We celebrate Jesus for
Yeah.
Easter, but it could be different at the end of the day. It's for the same purpose, but we learn something new
Exactly.
in the process.
well, the word
yeah.
Catholic means universal. So.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And we mentioned that I'm still going to say the word wrong because I still say Triduum.
The Triduum.
Triduum. And it's just, it reminds me of like how sometimes people will go on vacation, let's say, and they
Fly
want to
out on Good
start
Friday or
on
whatever.
Thursday because school was out on Wednesday. And we have done that before. We did it once, and it was the weirdest feeling to be in Florida for Good Friday, and that was the last time we ever did that. Those 3 days are the holiest days leading up to Easter, and it's so important to just recognize that
Yes.
and to live through them with your family.
I liked the example you gave about the practice.
Yeah. So we're just saying like Lent is like the practice, and then Thursday is the beginning of the big game.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
like you give it your all. It's not
Yes.
that Lent ended for you and you're fasting and you're
Yes.
alms. It's okay now.
This is
I've been
why.
preparing for all of this,
Yes.
and now
Yes.
you're in the big game.
This
kind
is
of
what
a
you're
thing.
preparing
Yeah.
for.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And for those
Which makes
few
me
days.
think when we're giving up something for Lent, what are we offering it for? Because if we're just going to say, oh, for 40 days or 50 days, I'm going to give up meat, or I'm going to give up sweets, or I'm going to give up social media. And if you don't go through those 3 holy days to get to Easter
Yeah.
Sunday, what's the point of giving anything up?
Right.
Really. And
Exactly.
it's weird. It
Yeah.
just hit me now that is, you're right. It's a race that we're all running. And it's what we're leading up to, the finish line.
And it's so beautiful because the whole community is there.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like in those 3 days, the entire community, like all of our churches do the washing of the feet. And it's funny because you see like, oh, I know him. He was picked this year. Or, oh, yeah. And so you visit whichever church you go to. But, you know, all of them do it. So you're like, the entire community comes together and celebrates these 3 days and in a very, very different spirit. You know, in Christmas, it's very joyful. It's a little bit more loud. And this one, it's very somber at first.
Yes.
And you're coming in very humble in a way.
Yeah.
Because in
I
these
feel
50
weird
days.
dressing colorful on Good Friday.
Yeah, no, I
It-
still
it's
wear
weird,
black.
but I'm like,
I still wear
just give us
black.
Music.
Yeah.
And no one's ever
Yeah.
told us to wear black.
Yeah.
But we do
But it's
anyhow,
that
because it's a very,
feeling.
very funeral-like. Yeah, we agree.
And I always set my alarm for 3 o'clock on Good Friday.
Yes, us
And we'll
too.
stop and pray the Chapel of Divine Mercy.
Yes, us too.
Yeah.
How funny.
It's
There are
traditionally the
certain-
hour Jesus died.
There are certain church hymns that I always, where I'm not going to be singing them, I will pray them in my head because they're prayers, and they come immediately to me without even having to think about it, even
Yeah.
if they weren't played that day in church. Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to remind the viewers that if you have any questions to ask, please feel free to ask them. I do have my phone on. I'm watching to see if anybody's asking anything. We'd be happy to answer. Another thing that we like to do is watch like the Passion of Christ or really any movie that talks to you about the life of Jesus Christ. I think
Yes.
sometimes it's just watching it is a little different. We say we're going to read the Bible, and you do, but when you watch it, it's just it's
living
there.
it.
You
There's
live
a
it.
new
Yeah.
show out, and I'll share the link after the show is done, called The Chosen.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an app that you download, and they're produced, the quality is right up there with the Passion of Christ.
Wow.
And it takes some of this biblical stories. It's amazing. So they just have one season, I think it's 7 episodes, but they said even it's appropriate to watch with your kids too, because it's interesting.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
yeah.
And I think
So-
one of the things that was important, when I would watch The Passion with my kids, is just to remind them that this really happened.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
a story.
It's not a story,
You know,
right?
It's
No.
not, it's not make-believe. This is what really happened, and it happened for you.
Yeah.
And what are you giving back to that?
For me, I think the best Lent I ever experienced, shout out to Kelly Nito and the Cross and the Light, when she was first producing the Cross and the Light, when it was still local in Detroit before it started traveling around, I was in it. And I've never walked Lent the way I had to walk Lent that year, because as the Wailing Women of Jerusalem, we were on the stage, we followed Jesus all through. We were there watching him die on that cross, and where I've come face to face with the gospel a million times, and where I was fully aware that that was not actually Jesus Christ, I was so there that I don't think I've ever experienced like the true conversion of heart of what the suffering was until I was on stage pretending to be a woman of Jerusalem.
That's amazing. I think if we're talking about the one of my highest moments of my faith life was after a silent retreat. So there's a few silent retreats in the area that are offered during Lent and sometimes during Holy Week. But I would actually challenge people to that. If you're, like we were talking earlier about, did we talk about fasting, almsgiving, and prayer? Is some are easier than others, but I would challenge everyone to enter into more silence. I think we're all so good at like, oh, I can read and I can watch and I can listen and I can talk and I can because it's our life. It's busy and it's noisy. But to enter into silence, go into silent adoration and just listen. Don't pull out a book. It's easy.
No, yeah.
Listen and
Silence,
pray.
yeah.
You can start off with 5 minutes, get up to 10 and 15, because that's when the Lord's going to speak to you. That's when you're going to find peace.
One of the things that I learned one time through Lent with Stations of the Cross, I always have great respect for Mother Mary, and it's just what we do. It's how we were raised, and a lot of it was tradition. And I never really got that connection with her until I went to a Stations of the Cross that viewed every station through the eyes of Mary.
I've done that too.
And I remember going into the first one, the second one, and then the third one, and it was like, oh my God, I get it.
Yeah.
Like now I get it.
It was
and that
the
was how I
fourth
was
one
able
that
to
broke
make
my
that
heart is when
connection
they
with her.
meet. Yes.
Yes.
The
So the
fourth
first one,
one.
the second one, the third
Yes.
one. And that was, I would say, the first time I really just had an appreciation for her and started developing a devotion. So to me, Stations of the Cross is such a great way for you to live what Jesus went through. And it's a good reminder every week as to why we're doing what we're doing.
And you remember her yes throughout Easter
Yes.
also.
Oh, yeah.
Her yes. Like, and you remember that she knew he wasn't going to be hers forever. So she
Yes.
knew that. So you
Yes.
remember her yes. And I'll never forget, I was jokingly, but still complaining at the same time. And I was like, oh my goodness, I gave up cheese. It's so hard. And one of the priests was like, why are you complaining about this? And I said, it's hard.
I like cheese.
And he's like, well, then just don't do anything. And I was like, are you like mad at me or something? And he's like, well, no. He's like, but why are you complaining about it? He's like, the whole point of carrying your cross is to be joyful about it. And that stuck with me. And I was like, oh.
Yeah.
Okay,
One
so,
of the things
yeah.
that we tend to forget is Jesus embraced his cross.
Yes,
And he picked it up.
exactly,
He
and I'm
didn't-
complaining about
He didn't
cheese.
shy from going to pick it up.
Exactly.
He wasn't scared.
And even after each time he fell, just
Got
got
back
right
up.
back up.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the station. That's one time I left
Yes.
confession and the priest was like, pick 2 stations and meditate on them. And one of the one I picked was Jesus fell the second time.
Yes.
Because that was like, it was like sin I was confessing for like the 100th time. And so I was like, that really spoke to me, like Jesus fell twice, and it's like that meditation during stations really speaks to me.
Right, but he got back up.
But he got back up.
And you're saying, but why? You're Jesus. You didn't have
You
to
didn't
get
have to.
back up.
Right.
He didn't have to. But then it's, again, the whole yes of saying this is, well, it's the whole reason why he came, right? It's the whole reason why we even have Christmas. So then he gets back up. It's like, well, I'm complaining here about my little thing, and then,
Right.
I'll carry my cross as well. So it is, the stations really, if you put yourself in them,
Yep.
that it really is a journey in itself every Friday.
Yeah.
My meditation is always when he's on the cross with the good thief and the bad thief.
Yeah.
Because when that guy is like, I mean, if you really were the Son of God, why don't you take yourself down? It's like, I know that I, being me, would be like, yeah, I can. Let me show you. And then that's why I can't ever be.
I wanted to read a quote. This is one of my favorites.
God knows what we
And
can and can't do.
It
Exactly.
says, this is talking, of course, about Jesus. He was created of a mother whom he created. He was carried by hands that he formed. He cried in the manger in wordless infancy. He, the Word, without whom all human eloquence is mute.
Oh, that's beautiful.
It's one of my favorites,
Wow.
always.
Wow.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And if you think
Yeah.
about the amount of humility
Oh, yeah.
that he had.
Oh,
yeah.
absolutely.
The
Absolutely.
humility, yeah, whatever, yeah. It's humility.
And then we actually have a couple questions. Priscilla is asking, for kids, do you let them guide their own Lent? And to pick out what to give up, or do we give suggestions? Or both? Patrice, she's your sister. We'll
Yeah,
let
she's
you
my
answer.
I think she does it well, where I think they do a mix of both, where each kid picks their thing, and then they do a couple of things as a family. So this past
That's
Sunday, we were at my
awesome.
mom's, and she was teaching them all these card games. I'm like, what's the sudden obsession? She's like, we're stopping electronics after a certain
I like it.
time.
Yeah. I
And
like
then,
it.
no electronics on a certain day. I don't know if it's Saturday or Sunday. I was like, wow, it's amazing. She's like, so we have cards. That's what we're gonna
Yeah.
do.
Jigsaw
Like, that's
puzzles.
so cute. So I mean, it's beautiful too. It's time to play as a family and
Right.
be together.
And I think, and I'm not a parent, but I think a lot of times, like when I look at my nephew and my niece, and I think, I'm like, we are the adults though. So
Yeah.
if we let them do whatever they want with it, I mean, I can't imagine if I were young, I would give up anything that was really sacrificial.
Yeah.
Right.
I'd give up
I'll
cleaning.
give up green beans or
Yeah,
something.
you know,
Give up
I'd give up
cleaning.
my chores, I can't imagine.
Yes.
So I think it's a real beautiful thing that, we let them pick, but I think also we're the adults. So it's us that, when we think of our faith and we think of the youngest age we were, that we remembered being Catholic. I think we'd recognize that. For me, it was Nana. Our moms, like you were saying, they always said their moms because she's always prayerful. We'd remember an adult or a caretaker put us on that path. So I
Yes.
think that's very important. We
Yes.
let them pick, but I think it is important to remember that we are the adults and we're putting them on that path. So it is important to be very interactive with that.
I
I
believe
think.
that with anything in life.
Yeah,
you give
I agree,
your
I
kids
agree.
the choices that you want
That
them
you
to
want
have.
them to choose. Yeah.
that
Yeah.
you want.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
3 choices.
Yeah.
Right.
But the nice thing is, I think parents don't realize this. It's good to start talking about Lent now. And that's why I'm so happy we're doing the
yeah.
show
Yeah, the
today.
timing was
It's
perfect.
good to start now just to prepare them. And, you have kids that are of different ages. So sometimes it takes that private conversation with the one that's a little bit older, or something different for the one that's younger. But just to get them to realize this is a journey we're all working on as a family.
And then even to
You know?
support each other too. Like,
Yes.
you give up chocolate, I'm not going to be like, ha ha.
Yes.
Right, yeah,
Kids tend to do that. My
exactly.
daughter
That's a good
today
point.
saw my niece and she's like, I saw her right away. Like, I saw her today. You were in school. Like they loved it. Like kids like to do that.
Yeah,
but
our
just to
joke
support
agree.
each other.
At the workplace, when I would give up meat, and some of my other coworkers we'd call it Team Soma, because Soma is how we say Lent. So
Yeah.
it's Team Soma, and we would help each other through the process.
Yeah,
and
for sure. We're the
that's
same
how
way
it
in my
should
house
work as
too.
a family too. You should be a support system with one another.
Well, and
Yeah.
kids are so good at checking us too, because they
Yes.
see far more than we ever think they do. And so, yeah, if you as a family are discussing what you individually and as a family are going to do, yeah, they will help you on that.
My nephews actually are more strict than my sister is. They're strict on their Lent, so they're actually.
I love
good.
that.
Yeah,
I
they're
love
good.
that.
It's very nice.
Yeah,
It's nice to see when the kids are embracing their faith.
Yeah,
And it makes it very unified, like we're in it together.
yeah,
Yes.
Because we always are. So even though at their own personal fasting, but like we said, like if we're going out to dinner and I know Patrice, is giving up sweets and she absolutely loves it, I'm not going to have a cake in front of her. I'm just not going to do that. It's part of just
Yeah.
being supportive of our
But
own journey.
On the other side of that too, when I lived at home, I couldn't fast from something that would make my mom make me an extra meal. That's not fair.
Oh
Just
yeah,
say, oh, Mom, I'm giving
yeah.
up
My
meat,
fast shouldn't
so
be someone's
yeah,
burden.
It shouldn't be,
I
your
agree.
fast shouldn't be someone's
I agree.
burden.
I wonder
And
if
also
my
that goes
kids
in
are
the same
watching.
note.
My kids are watching.
Yeah, I'm the same. I'm
And
the
on the
same
same
way.
note, I'd had someone, and I guess we could debate this too, is about coffee. They're like, I'm not a good person when I don't have my coffee. So I don't give up coffee on behalf of other people. So I don't know if that's a thing too, is like if your fast is
That's
making
a very
you such
real
a
thing for
curmudgeon,
some people.
if
Oh,
you're such
absolutely.
a
Yeah, it's a
miserable
very real
person
thing.
because of your fast, it's probably a burden on other people too.
Yeah, and it doesn't make you any holier,
You're
and
not-
that's the whole
yeah.
point.
It doesn't.
You're not
So if it just
growing
makes you
closer to
bitter,
Jesus if
we're not
you're
doing this
Yeah.
correctly.
raging out
So that was
everywhere.
what we discussed too. You don't want to fast to the point where you're lethargic through the day.
Right,
You're
right.
not feeling good.
No.
Yet if you give up coffee, chances are you're going to be cranky for a couple of days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you'll get
You'll
over
get
it.
over it,
But you don't want to bring yourself to a point where you're starting to suffer in a way that
Yes.
doesn't make
You
sense.
can't function
Exactly,
at work.
exactly.
Yes.
You're
Exactly.
being mean to your kids.
And I think that
like,
the point is what we're not, I would like people to understand is it's spiritual growth.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not, and sometimes, yes, maybe you're giving up sweets because 5 pounds makes a difference. And that's hard. It is hard to do. I don't want to take that away from the person. It is hard and it is a struggle. But how is it bringing you closer to Jesus? What are you doing or what are you taking on that's bringing you closer to Jesus? That should be the goal.
Well, and we don't grow when we're comfortable.
Yeah.
We have our most growth when we're in a situation that makes us uncomfortable. I mean, even academically, what was a class you learned the most from? The one you had to work so hard on, more so than the one that came easy to you. So it's the same thing with being a disciple. You have to work at it. The disciples had to work at it. They all ran away at the crucifixion. Only John hung out.
Yes.
Everybody else was off hiding or pretending like they didn't know him or whatever. And so we learn from them as well. So.
And it's good to get creative. Like my sister, and we found this out on accident one time. My sister one year gave up her bed, so she would sleep on the floor. Yeah. And we only knew because we walked in, we're like, what are you doing, loser? And she's like, none of your business. And we later found out she gave up her bed, and we were like, so we asked just to be curious because we're nosy, we're her siblings. Like, why would you give up your bed? She's like, because it's so comfortable. She's like, I have the greatest mattress ever. She's like, I just want it to be uncomfortable. And for her, the same. Food, she got used to giving it up.
Yes.
And, she's like, there's only so many things I could add. And for her, her concern was when she would add something, it became very monotonous very fast.
Yeah.
So she's like, I'm just doing nothing now. So she gave up her bed, and I thought that was pretty creative. She
Yeah,
said,
it was
I
creative.
love naps, and I love my bed. So she said she gave up her
You know,
bed.
another, if you can't do the whole bed, is your pillow.
Yeah, that's another one.
A pillow
Yeah.
or a blanket, that kind
Yeah.
of thing. The other one, this is a really hard one too, is cold showers.
I don't know if I can go that
I
far.
think Patrice, you
I
told
could
me
too,
about that
yeah.
one time.
I know.
Somebody
I know.
gave
There's a
up.
group of men that are
Yes.
doing it right now. There's an Exodus 90 like men's challenge.
Yeah.
That's
Cold
tough.
showers.
Yeah. So
So
it's the
they're-
little luxuries that we have. It doesn't always have to be, I'm giving up meat for 50 days. Like I said, for me, that's not difficult. So it's the luxuries that we have that we're like, I don't know if I can go without
I
that.
had a friend that turned off the radio in the car.
Yep. I've
And
done that.
drove in silence.
Yeah. I've
everywhere.
done that.
And
You
like
feel
wouldn't take
that.
the call or anything.
You
like,
feel
You
it.
felt that silence.
Right.
And it's
Yeah.
refreshing. Back to my point about
Oh,
silence.
absolutely.
The first couple of days, this is so weird. But then it's, oh my gosh, you get used to the silence. When the noise comes back, you're like, oh,
Yes.
you don't even
I
want
would
it.
love to be
It's
able to
funny
get
when I
used to
came
silence.
back. Yeah, when I came back from a silent retreat, I realized how loud
Loud
everything
the
was.
world is.
Everything.
Everything was very,
TV's
very
always
loud.
on.
Yes.
Everything is so loud.
I took our 7th graders recently into the church, put them before the tabernacle, spread them out, and just did a breathing exercise with them. And the whole
Wow.
church was silent other than me counting in for 4 and out for 4. And I did it. And then once they got the pattern, I stopped.
Yeah.
And they all just sat there and were breathing.
Wow.
And I watched them, and their bodies physically went from like, why are we here, to like, okay, I know why we're here. And I saw their faces relax, like they just
Wow.
gave into it. And it was amazing to watch because they were silent. And they're never silent. Like none of us are ever silent. So
Yeah.
So we talked
That's
a lot
awesome.
about what we're actually giving up. What are some things that you would recommend for people to do? Reading, what type of reading?
As far as adding or giving
Adding
up?
on.
Adding on.
I'd
I
like to
always
close
like
the
to
show
jump
that
to
way.
scripture.
Yes.
Yeah.
We always get very intimidated by it. So we read all these other books, which I think are great, but I always jump in with
yeah,
scripture.
go right in.
A couple easy books, as I think scripture's a good one. Someone this morning said, I don't know who had said it to her, but reading the Psalms calms your anger.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so Psalms can be long, but they're beautiful and they're kind of easy.
And yeah, they're easy because they're bits of
easy.
it. They're bits.
So if
yeah.
you, and sometimes I just flip to anyone. You don't have to like start from one and go to like
Exactly.
whatever. But reading a psalm a day, and then always I recommend people start with Genesis. Don't start with Genesis.
No,
No.
don't start
Yeah.
with Genesis.
Don't.
Start with the Gospels or
Yes.
with the letters. Like the letter to Timothy is a really easy
Yes.
one, a really good one. Romans. Start with the
Yes.
letters and then the Gospels.
Yes, I would agree with that. The other thing with the Psalms is you can pray them, like focus on Lectio Divina of the
Yeah.
Psalm itself, where read it over slowly a couple of times, see what verse or what word is speaking to you. You could read the same Psalm every day and get a different message every time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so that's
This-
really good too.
This has been such a great talk. I can't believe that we've already reached our 1
Oh,
hour.
we had so much
Wow.
fun.
Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I'm going to come in and comment a bunch of like suggestions of things to give up, articles.
Yes,
Sure, that would be
same.
great.
Some books to
Sure.
read. Yeah.
And thank you to the viewers that tuned in and watched. Thank you, ladies, for joining
Thanks
us.
for having
Thank
I
you.
hope everybody has a very blessed and fruitful Lent season.
Amen.
Thank
God
you, you
bless.
too. Thank
Yes.
you. Thank
Thank
you so
you.
much.
Thank you.